Hey everybody, it's the dude here to bring you another video. The Walking Dead is back on, and so am I. Season 8 has begun, and with that they premiered episode 100. It was a very ambitious episode that dealt with both the past, present, and future of the entire series. We got a lot to talk about, so let's get right to it. First, a little bit of a spoiler warning if you haven't seen the episode. I don't know why you're watching this. Please stop watching now. In addition to that, I will be comparing and discussing the Walking Dead comics. I'm going to try to keep the spoilers pretty light because the comic is an amazing read, but I do want to be clear what I actually consider a spoiler. I don't think it's a spoiler if the show has covered something from the comic. For example, this season is titled All Out War after the All Out War story arc in the comics. It was a 12-issue arc, so a year's worth of comic books, but it was released in 6 months, 2 issues a month. Just in the first episode, they've gone through the first 2 issues of that arc, issues 115 and 116. So anything that happens in those issues I think is free game, the show's covered it. Anything that happens in any issue after that, well, that's a spoiler. A little bit later, there is one kind of major spoiler that I will be discussing because I kind of have to discuss it, but I'll make sure to give you fair warning right before that. With all that said, I got a question for you. Is Rick gonna die? Like, seriously. Since the show's been on, I've kind of thought that if Rick was ever going to die, that it would be at the end of the series. So for me to propose that question, is Rick gonna die this season, is a little strange. I mean, I haven't heard if this is the last season, but so many things in this first episode I think really point to that. As I said, this episode deals with the past, the present, and the future. It is constantly recalling the past by giving us lines being said again, shots being reused. Now, sure, a lot of that could just be in celebration of the 100th episode. It's a landmark. They could have just been paying homage to all the moments that came before it. But there were a few things that I just think aren't that simple. For example, Carl. Carl's first scene in this episode is shot for shot from the first scene of episode 1 of season 1. He's on the road, he's getting gas, he looks at some zombies, he hears something, he ducks, he puts his hat on the ground. And then Rick pops in and kind of blows the whole scene. They have a little conversation about hope. Rick's the cynical one now, and Carl is the one looking to help people more. In a lot of ways, this felt like passing the torch to Carl, similar to, like, the new Star Wars trilogy, handing the reins over to a younger generation. I don't know how many double lines there were in this episode that were like, Rick, it's not about you. Well, who is it about? Back when the comic book first started, the end of the first arc was Shane threatening to kill Rick and then Carl shooting him. And it's a pretty famous fun fact that Robert Kirkman had the idea to, instead of Carl shooting Shane, have Shane actually kill Rick, and the story be all about Carl dealing with this stepdad who killed his father, and maybe having to kill Shane in the future. I think it's always been about Carl. We were just following Rick as he was building a world for Carl. The first episode of each season usually gives us a pretty good idea of the arc that every character is going to take over the entire 16 episodes. But honestly, so few characters got a lot of screen time. There was a Daryl and Dwight, along with Daryl, Carol, Morgan, and Tara story, but that was all about herding the walkers towards the sanctuary. They honestly had no character moments of change, besides like hugs and stuff. Rosita's still salty. Negan is an unmovable, unchanging force of fantasticness. The only characters that got any real time in order to set up any kind of arc for this season were Rick, Carl, and Michonne. Michonne and Carl had this scene where she's like, hey, I'm following your lead. You're the one in charge. It's a nice little scene right out of the comics, but the comics don't really have any foreshadowing, so when you read it there, it didn't really feel out of place like they were trying to set Carl up for something. In the show, when you add all of these, it's not about you, it does really feel like they're setting Carl up to be the main character. And then the episode has one really confusing major issue. It has to do with the flash forwards. Even in the trailer, they showed us this nuts shot of Rick full bearded and short cropped gray hair. I kind of thought that we were going to see this maybe at the end of the season or in the middle of the season, but nope, we get it in like the first 5 seconds. And I really think it represents the future that Rick is imagining throughout the entire episode. We keep cutting back and forth between the present and the future, and I think it tells us what Rick wants. He wants to see his daughter grow up. He wants Michonne and Carl to be happy. But it's weird. Now here's where the spoiler that I talked about earlier comes in. Spoiler warning. And if you haven't heard about this since the trailer dropped, you're probably not on the internet a lot, which means you're probably not watching this YouTube video. So most people probably know that this happens. This is the future of The Walking Dead. When it popped up in the trailer, all the comic book fans are like, oh, yep, I know what's happening there. Rick with a cane, I get that. After the war, there is a time skip. Rick doesn't necessarily go all gray, but he does get a short haircut and a beard and a cane. And it's really cool that they did it. I honestly hate the hair and the beard, but great. It's just, why would they show us that? If that's the direction they're going, why spoil that Rick and Michonne and Carl and Judith all survive? If this is the future, just fucking don't show us that. I don't want to know that. I want to be worried that Carl might get shot for the third time or that Michonne will fall off a building. The comics never showed us an image of future Rick before future Rick was here. I don't need that. I think it takes away from the inevitable reveal. So, my thought is that that's not the future of The Walking Dead. At least in the show. They know that all the comic book fans think that that's what's going to happen. They show us that. They confirm it. But really, it's just what Rick wants. Similar to last season's opening, when you see the big table shot of all of Rick's friends and family sitting and eating together, this is the future that Rick is fighting for, but not necessarily the future that he'll get. I kind of have to assume that this is misdirection, or else I think it's a bad decision to show us this early. They show the waking up moment twice in the episode, and in that little chunk of a scene, they cut to a shot of Rick's clock. It's a reference to the shot of the clock in the hospital room in Season 1. But I think it's incredibly interesting, like the clock in Season 1, that it is not running. As far as I know, Rick has been keeping time ever since he got to Alexandria. And that action of keeping a clock running has been showing us that he's back on track, trying to be a part of society and help the world grow. Those episodes right when they get to Alexandria were all titled based on a monologue that old man Dale gave, also in Season 1. It's about Dale's watch and why he keeps time even though the world has ended. It goes, "I like what a father said to his son when he gives him a watch that had been handed down through generations. He says, 'I give it to you not that you may remember time, but that you may forget it, for a moment, now and then, and not spend all your time trying to conquer it.'" And that action of keeping a clock running represents the future. Keeping society intact, keeping your humanity intact. It's also about not living in the past. This whole episode is living in the past. Now, this clock in this flash forward scene isn't Rick's watch, but the fact that it's not running, while it could be just a simple homage to episode 1, I think means that this reality is kind of bullshit. This reality of everybody being happy and moving on and growing as a community is directly in conflict with this shot of time standing still. That, of course, and the Weird Al Yankovic song that plays in the background. Bump, bump, bump. Another one rides the bus. Bump, bump, bump. Another one rides the bus. That's the worst thing that's ever happened to this series. Honestly, the worst thing. Worse than Andrea. So if I think none of that's going to happen, what's really going to happen? Now, there is another shot that takes place several times throughout the episode. It's a shot of Rick, teary-eyed. Could be sitting, could be standing, kind of in the woods. It's hard to tell. We're not meant to tell. It's very reminiscent of the last shot of the first episode of last season after Glenn and Abraham died, spoiler, where it's a close-up on Rick's eyes of him just thinking of the horrible things that have happened. It also clearly doesn't take place in the present or in the future. Rick looks like he does now, but he looks like he's been through some stuff that hasn't yet happened. It makes me think that the teary-eyed Rick scene is actually the present that the entire season is. It's this moment in which Rick is alone thinking about the past, the whole war, which is the season we're going to watch, and then the future that he wants so bad, this hazy, Weird Al Yankovic kind of reality. So what's going on in this reality, this teary-eyed Rick? What is he feeling? What did he just experience? Now, it's possible he just experienced someone else's death. I don't think it'll be Carl, because I think they're going to be setting up him to live forever. And I don't think it's going to be Michonne, because I think the teary-eyed Rick scene is going to be either at the mid-season finale or the season finale, which means that they shouldn't do a fake-out Michonne death or real Michonne death, because they just did that in the previous season finale. It could absolutely be Judith. The end of these flash forwards really centralized on him being able to raise his daughter in this world and build a new world for her. In the comics, spoiler alert, Judith didn't make it. She died in the prison when they were escaping as the governor was attacking. Lori was carrying her, and then Rick is like running ahead and he turns around. "Lori, keep running!" And she goes, gets shot right through the back, and it goes through the baby, and the baby like explodes. It's horrible. It's a moment that they cut out of the show for reasons I understand. It's hard to kill a baby live on camera, even if it's a fake baby, and everybody knows it's a fake baby. It's hard. But I mean, honestly, I've been waiting for that to really happen forever. Back when Beth was alive and she was holding the baby the whole time, I thought that eventually Beth was just going to be running from the governor and she was going to die holding the baby. I really wanted that. Everybody that's ever held Judith, I've always wanted them to die like that, and I still kind of want that. It would be something super evil for Negan to do, and it would also get Rick in this position to cry like a little baby. And near the end of the episode, they show us this teary-eyed Rick again, and he says a line. He says, "My mercy prevails over my wrath." And that's very interesting. Obviously, at the beginning of this season, Rick's just like, "There's only one person that needs to die, and it's Negan. He's gonna kill Negan. I'm gonna kill you." That's his wrath. So in this moment that they're foreshadowing, he's choosing mercy over wrath. So whatever he just experienced is something that he is choosing to let go of? Maybe? And Judith's death probably wouldn't be that. I think my wrath would go over my mercy if my daughter just died. But the conversation between mercy and wrath really seems like something that Morgan might put forth. Obviously, he's back to killing people, but ever since he was reintroduced in the show, I thought that he was going to have a pivotal role in changing Rick, which totally hasn't happened yet. All last season, when it began with Rick saying, "I'm gonna kill you, Negan," I thought that Rick and Morgan would develop a stronger relationship, have more scenes together, and that maybe Morgan would die and this would change Rick. Check out my very, very belated Morgan death theory from like a year ago. Skip all the fluff about season 7, but there's a great Morgan death theory right in the center of it. It's good. In the comics, Morgan dies like a while ago when the zombies attack Alexandria, so Morgan's really up for grabs. I think this line about mercy and wrath will be said at one point during this season, and whoever said it I think is going to be directly involved in this last teary-eyed Rick scene. So it could be Judith, it could be Morgan, but it could be Rick himself. He's in the woods. He kind of looks like he's alone. It reminds me a lot of that gym scene in season 1 where he's been bitten and he's just waiting for it. What if Rick got infected in some way? And he's going through the process. This is the last spoiler, I promise, and it's so difficult for me because I don't want to talk about it, but I think it's integral to my theory that I do discuss it. So, spoiler warning for something that happens at the end of the war. I'm going to go slow, so you'll have time to stop watching if you feel like you should. Part of Negan's plan to counter, what's going on, it's a war, is to coat all of his melee weapons, so like Lucille, all the Savior's knives, and Dwight's crossbow, with zombie guts. It's an idea he comes up with. It could be an idea that Eugene comes up with in the show. Cross your fingers. Nevertheless, there's this moment, and this is the big spoiler. Stop watching. I'm sorry. It's a device that is eventually used to test Dwight. In the middle of this very heated battle, Negan commands Dwight to shoot Rick. He's got a good eyeline on Rick, and Dwight has this zombie-coated crossbow. This big tense moment, and he shoots him, and Rick's like, ugh! And then for like an issue, we're all like, oh shit, Rick's infected. Rick's gonna die. But Dwight's a good guy, so Rick's not infected. And Negan's really salty. It was kind of brushed over. I love it that Dwight isn't evil, but what if it doesn't go that way? What if Dwight is evil? What if somebody else shoots Rick? And what if he does get infected? What if, because they know all the comic book fans are 100% sure that Rick's not going to get infected, and also 2,000% sure that we're going into the future time skip timeline where Rick's an old man with a cane? What if they're fooling us? And what if this one little shot, this teary-eyed Rick, is the one hint we're gonna get that he's dying, passing the torch to another generation? Bear in mind this is just a theory, so maybe it won't happen, but it definitely has to make you think, why would they spoil it with this flash forward if this is what the future is? Isn't that kind of fucking stupid? I think it is. So if the show does end up going in that direction, I think that's lame. It gets me really excited to think about it. Let me know what you think down in the comments section. Also, if by some chance you like this video and want to see some more, please give me a like. I would love a like. I will be releasing videos talking about all things Walking Dead. Hit that subscribe button and the little bell to get notified. If you're a returning fan, thank you for waiting all summer for a good The Dude video. You may have noticed that I've kind of mixed up my formula. I am a senior in college. I'm a film major. Yay. So it's my final year of college, but it's also like a full season of The Walking Dead. And that's a lot to juggle. I really love this show. I really want to do videos, but I definitely just don't have time for the type of videos that I was doing, which were completely comprehensive analytical reviews of every little fucking moment of the whole show, of every episode. If you want to see what I'm talking about, if you haven't seen them, my whole channel is all of these 80-minute videos, and they're really long. So I can't do that, and I hope you forgive me and keep watching. And if you feel like it, just watch the video again, maybe you missed something. Alright, that has been all for me. This has been The Dude. See ya.